Howdy, y'all. Welcome back to the Transfer Portal CFB podcast presented by No Context CFB. I'm Josh, here with my man Dylan, pulling off his flu game podcast tonight. Not exactly that strong, but getting through it. Dylan, how you doing, man, on this fine, what's it, Thursday? Thursday? Yeah.
We're a little bit better. I had Josh host because my voice still kind of sounds like garbage. I'm getting over a cold or flu or something. So if we were to have done this podcast last night, it would have been way worse. So I'm glad we're doing it now. I sound a little bit better, but feeling good. It's just crazy that we only have one FBS football game on the docket. It's that time of the year. But there's still a lot going on in college football. So let's get down to it.
Yeah, you're right, Dylan. And first, we're gonna start off with that one FBS game that you're mentioning. It's Navy Army week. I'm saying Navy Army instead of Army Navy, because I have a bunch of relatives who are in the Navy, and so I feel like it would be wrong to start it with Army. Um, this is a little background, for everyone who might not be in the loop exactly for this specific Army Navy game. Oh, I flipped into saying it. Oh well. Army is in position to claim the Commander in Chief's trophy with a win this year. A Navy victory, however, means that no one will have the trophy. So Army or Air Force would retain it. If you read up though on how the programs feel about when someone retains it versus straight out winning it, it's more like a nobody won it, so nobody has it kind of deal, and like they kind of just ignore it because they're like, we'd rather win it. Let's take it. Which, hey, shouts to them. That's awesome. The last time the Black Knights won the Commander in Chief's trophy was in 2020, which was their ninth overall, which is kind of surprising. That's not that many. They are third behind the Midshipmen, who have 16. They both trail Air Force, though, who has 21. And if you read like any history about how Army and Navy feel about that, they hate it. They absolutely hate that Air Force just skyrocketed ahead of them. It's ridiculous, and then Air Force likes to gloat about that. But it's a fun thing about this. It's the whole brothers in arms thing. But when they're playing each other, they're gonna beat each other up, especially with the style of play. This game will be played in Gillette Stadium, home, of course, the New England Patriots, and head coach Bill Belichick. If you know anything about Bill Belichick and his background, his father Steve was a coach and scout for Navy for a long time, and then even after Steve retired, he'd go to every single Navy game. He'd have notes. He'd give the notes directly to the coaches, be like, "Hey, why didn't you do this? Why did you do this? Good job on that. Why didn't you do this?" Um, Big in the program. There's a lot you can read about Kenyon Matilolo, Navy's former head coach, how Belichick gave them a lot of access to the Patriots that Belichick didn't give. Bill Belichick didn't give to other programs. And Bill grew up in Annapolis, went to like Annapolis High School, loves the Navy, talks about them a lot. He's maintained a great relationship with the university. He will be the college game day guest picker, so he'll probably pick Navy. The midshipmen lead the series. It is 62 Navy wins, 54 Army wins. It's 7 ties. There have been epic clashes in this game, sometimes potential title implications way back in the day. Those days are long gone, unfortunately, but even then, the passion and excitement for this game, it's out of this world. It's going to be awesome. Those in attendance are going to love it. I hope to be there one day. Even though the weather's notoriously bad, even though this weekend it's cold right now. I checked, it's like in the 20s right now. But Saturday it's actually supposed to get up to like the mid 50s, around mid 40s for kickoff. So that's pretty balmy, for the northeast at this time. This game kicks off at 3 p.m. Eastern time on CBS. And that's the whole backdrop. Dylan, what are your memories for this game? It could be an overall feeling for the history of the game or just any specific memories you have, or both, whatever you want to talk about.
Yeah, one thing I really enjoy about the Army Navy week is it is the only game that's on, in the FBS. Obviously, have FCS semifinals and all that good stuff. I believe it's semifinals, but it's awesome just to kind of sit back and watch just one game because every week in college football, I'm always flipping through a million games at the same time, and by the end of the season, there's so many scenarios running around, awards and storylines, headlines, all that stuff that's kind of floating around. It's kind of nice to just sit and watch one game start to finish between two teams that, like you said, hate each other but have like an actual respect for each other at the same time. It's really a different feel than any other rivalry in, I would argue, sports. And so I always love watching at the very least the pregame, just because it feels like, the national anthem and the coin toss and all that sort of stuff. It just means a lot more in that atmosphere than really any other game. But in terms of memories, some of my favorite memories, I think last year's game was one of my favorite Army Navy games that I've ever seen because, it was a double overtime game, notoriously, a low scoring game, but I don't think it had never been in overtime before, and went to two. It was just chaotic at the end of the game. Both teams scored in the first overtime, and the Navy looked like they were about to score and fumbled. Army recovered it and then kicked the game-winning field goal to win it, and just the emotions of that were incredible. People like ripping their helmets off and throwing them and running around screaming, and um, yeah, it was just an amazing, amazing game. And when we did our preview magazine this year, this winter spring, a lot of what we were, focusing on was previews for, players. We were looking at, player stories. We wanted to tell some player stories. So we talked to Isaiah Alston at Army, and we talked to Jaden Umbarger at Navy. And part of the reason why we did that is because we were interested in what's it like to be a wide receiver at a service academy football program. And we talked to them a little bit about this rivalry, and there were two completely different sentiments, which kind of took me by surprise because Jaden Umbarger at Navy was talking about, it's definitely something that we're circling on the map, but we have to take it one day at a time to get there. We'll worry about that when we get there. We're all about the present. And then when I talked to Isaiah Alston, it was like everything we do is to beat Navy. Every single day is about motivating ourselves to beat Navy. They've got beat Navy on all the walls. It's above all their doors in their facility. That is all they think about, do, motivate themselves to do. That's their whole thing, is to beat Navy. And so I'm really intrigued to see what that looks like now that Navy is, probably all about beat Army, obviously, because that's this week. So I want to see if we'll see some of the, more passing in this game. Like Army threw it, I think, 10 times last game. Navy threw it once. I want to see if we can see just this unorthodox, Navy Army game where everybody's throwing the heck out of the ball. But it's fun. I always enjoy watching the Navy Army games, and um, getting to feel like a patriot for a day, if you will. Pun intended, with Bill Belichick being the college game day guest picker.
Yeah, man, it's awesome. Same sentiments you talk about. Just it's a fun game. The uniforms that they always break out for this the past few years, especially, have been really awesome. Army's kind of, in my opinion, even though spoiler alert, I'm gonna side with Navy, but Army's uniforms have been better, but Navy's have been awesome too. My specific memories are when I started watching college football, it was basically during the like '07 to '08, '09. That was in the middle really of Navy's 14-year win streak. So I just didn't know a time when Navy lost the Army. And Navy dominated. That's what Navy, like, they were close. Like I remember Navy. This isn't an Army thing, but they were like against um Ohio State. It was like early, and they were competitive with Ohio State for a little bit until like a late like interception, like the third or fourth quarter. Um, and then yeah, so I specifically remember the 2016 game when Army won, and it's kind of a you could feel it coming the entire time. And then Army was closing in, Navy's trying to keep it close. And again, these games are just always close because the style of play, the option game, it's always gonna be close. They don't really well, in this game they kind of break up more passes, but even then, like it's not what you usually expect from a high flying passing attack. So it's close at the end, and then Army was chewing away, and then Army pulled it out. And I remember Army won, like the some Bradshaw, I think the quarterback, yeah, he takes the knee, immediately stands up, he's hyping. I think he chucked the football. Army storms the field. And like I was sad, of course, because I was cheering for Navy, but I was also really happy because like it's nice to see when both sides have kind of taken over. Even though Army has kind of dominated it since then, Navy's won it twice. That's another one I'll pick. The 2021 game, I was the only one on the website to pick Navy, and I just picked them because I'm like, I'm just gonna pick Navy. I have to. And my power went out, or the power went out in my house. So I didn't watch the game. So I was like just, fixing around the house, doing whatever, preparing the house so we could have power with our generator, but it wasn't enough to get TV or Wi-Fi running. So I'm getting texts from my friends um and other places, like they're giving me updates, and so they were all cheering for Army. So they're just sending me sad texts as I'm realizing, and I'm getting happy realizing Navy wins. So Navy pulled that off. Really excited. Thankfully someone had uploaded the entire full game later that night, so I went back and watched it, which was really really cool. And it was like Navy pulled out a crazy fake punt to the up back in the fourth quarter when the up back didn't even know it was coming to him. So you can kind of see him. He kind of like catches it right in front of his face. And it looks like, oh, they just did a really good job at surprise. No, he was surprised, but he was able to run for the first down. And Navy, I think they ended up scoring on that drive. And it was the difference. So that was another fun one for me. And of course, like Keenan Reynolds, um,
Mhm.
it really stood out like that when he dominated in the snow. And I wish he had been a Heisman finalist that year because, again, if you don't know, it's kind of a legend at this point. But if you don't know, Keenan Reynolds at Navy dominated, broke all kinds of records. If he would have been a finalist, because Army Navy, of course, they play it the day of the Heisman ceremony. That game was in Philadelphia, so it would have been if he was a finalist, and I think he finished just outside the voting to be a finalist. He would have been picked up in a helicopter from the game, flown to New York, probably just in time to walk up for the ceremony to start. So that would have been really really cool to see. But yeah, as for this game itself, uh, it's hard. It's always hard. Even if one team's really unmatched against the other, just because the emotions, again, like we said, the style of play, it's going to lend itself to a closer game unless one team is like really outmatched. But I mean, we thought that earlier this year for Air Force and Army, and there was some injuries involved for Air Force, but then Army just took that game over. So, Dylan, who do you have taking this edition of the Navy Army game?
This one's interesting because both teams have shown a lot of like potential to what I thought they could be this year, and Army's dealt with a lot of injuries and personnel changes and things like that. But um, I am gonna roll with Navy in this one. I just think I like their offense at this point in the season a little bit better than I like Army's. Army's is an interesting one because some of their games, they will look like they're completely unstoppable. Early in the season, they were a lot of fun to watch. With Bryson Daly throwing the ball all over the place, it looked like they were going to be a really elite offense. Um, and their defense looked phenomenal against Air Force. They've won three straight to, put themselves within 6 wins on the season. But um, I'm going to roll with Navy on this one. I think a lot of it's a pretty veteran team. Um, and I know, Coach Newberry, definitely wants to, make up for last year's loss because that one was as tough of a loss in this series as there is. And, um, you know, I I like you talked about it a little bit and we talked about it before the podcast started, but I'm a Navy guy at heart. My dad served in the Navy, my grandfather served in the Navy, so I am a little bit biased towards the Navy, but um I think they get their revenge in this one, and it's obviously going to be close. I mean, I would predict this one to be a one-score game. I'd probably put money on it. It's kind of what we're used to most years, but um, I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if Army wins like a really super low-scoring game because their defense, like I said, has been rolling as of late. Um, but I will go with Navy. Excuse me. I will go with Navy in this one.
Yeah, I'll just basically take what you said, and I'll pick Navy, and also I'll just throw in just my own, if you've watched on the upset specials, my own random weirdness that I'll throw in here. Not exactly elite breakdowns, but Navy did beat Army to win the sprint football championship. Sprint football is players have to be like under 170 pounds or 170 pounds and under. So it's like just a few schools in the Northeast play it, and the Naval Academy or Navy and Army, they've dominated. Navy has the most. So riding off that success, I'll take Navy also. Again, everything you said, but wouldn't be surprised if Army wins. It's close. Both teams are 5-6. Bowls have already been filled up. Even with a sixth win, Army wouldn't be eligible because two of those wins are over FCS teams. And Navy, again, it's just the whole thing with the weird scheduling. It's kind of hard to, if one of these teams makes a bowl, then you're scrambling to schedule for early bowls. So a little unfortunate, but I think it's it's almost fitting that this will be the final game of the season for these two teams because they can go all out for this one. Next year it's going to be a conference game because SMU's leaving to the ACC. So yeah, ACC to join the AAC is Army. This game though, I believe it will be still be a non-conference game, so it will be played again, same slot and everything. It's just going to be a little weird to see, if like potentially one of these teams makes the AAC title game and then they play this game the following week. So that happened once before. Navy, um, I think they lost the title AAC title and then they lost Army. So maybe you don't actually want to make it to the title. I don't know. It's a weird balance. But yeah, that's my pick for this one. We also have this upcoming weekend just a few other games in other divisions. There's NAIA matchups. I don't have those pulled up unfortunately, but those have actually been fairly competitive and fun. So you should check those out if you can, or at least read up the box scores. At Division 2, Division 3. So at noon this Saturday, Lenore Ryan will play Harding University. Lenore Ryan's 13-1. Harding University is 13-0. I talked to a few people who like know some D3 stuff just because like they know it, or D2 and D3. They said Harding is a monster. So this might be real fun to watch. SUYN, Cortland and Randolph-Macon, they play. Cortland is 12-1. Randolph-Macon is 13-0. That's Division 3 semifinal. Division 2 at 3:30 is Kutztown versus Colorado School of Mines. Everyone loves the School of the Mines, kind of the school, whether home field apparel and stuff like that. Everyone loves them. That's when this feels like it's School of the Mines year. I think they're runners up last year. They made the semifinals last year. They're really fun. And then Division 3, North Central, the reigning champs, they're 13-0. They're playing 13-0, also Wartburg College. Wartburg's out of Iowa. I saw them because I went to a D3 school. I saw Wartburg for other things, and doesn't matter what sport they played, they're really, really good. But again, North Central is the reigning champs. So that's going to be really, really fun. These games, sometimes you can find them like even like the local, like if you go on the team website, sometimes they give you decent access to them. I don't know, even the radio. So just check those ones out. FCS, these ones will be going out throughout the day. On Friday, it actually starts out. Furman travels to Montana. I didn't check the weather, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be cold. ESPN2 or ESPN Plus at 9 p.m. I love Montana. I've been to the campus actually. It's really, really cool in the summertime. They have the Big M out on like a hill and you can go hike to it. I didn't because I'm not hiking. I'm not in any shape to do that at all. And that's when I was in shape. I don't want to do that. Moving to Saturday, Villanova travels to South Dakota State. That's at noon on ESPN or ESPN Plus. South Dakota State is probably going to trash Villanova. No offense to Villanova, but South Dakota State, the reigning champs, are monsters. North Dakota State, they are the only unseeded team to make it through in the FCS playoffs by the skin of their teeth. They blocked an extra point in overtime against Montana State. That was crushing for Montana State. I kind of felt Montana State should have gone for 2 because why not? But again, it's a blocked extra point. You can't really anticipate that. That game is at, I have to do math because I have the games on Pacific time, 11, 12, 1, 2, 2:30 p.m. on ABC or ESPN Plus. And finally, University of Albany travels up to the fierce Kibbe Dome. That is at 10 Eastern, but please stay up for Big Sky After Dark. That game is on ESPN Plus. It's going to be so much fun to watch that one. Idaho skinning their teeth win last week. They're facing the Salukis of Southern Illinois. Southern Illinois had the lead for most of the game. Idaho came back. The Salukis missed I don't remember if it was like tipped at the line or something, but they missed a field goal at the end of regulation, and then Idaho won it in overtime. That one was a fun one to watch, man. So shout out to Idaho.
Yeah, I wanted to confirm something. So in Missoula and Montana for Friday, the high is 36, low is 24. So
Oh,
hoping for some snow there in Missoula Friday night. But yes, I did want to shout out Idaho as well. Our writer Karan did a really awesome piece about how Idaho is America's team and talked about just kind of the quirks and the uniqueness of that program, and shouted out Jason Eck and all the amazing talent that they have on their offense. They've been a ton of fun to watch the last couple of years under Jason Eck, and we've had the privilege of talking to Coach Eck and Giovanni McCoy for the magazine as well. There is no program in college football at any level that has supported the transfer portal CFP more than Idaho, and they posted that article, they shared it. It was just really awesome to see that community embrace Karan's article and what we do. So shout out to Idaho. I love you guys. You guys are fantastic. So just wanted to throw that in there real quick.
Yeah, I mean they're so much fun. Um, if you don't know about Idaho's history, just a quick they were in the FCS or they were in low division, went up to FBS, did okay, but then they really struggled. They made the decision that you don't see a lot of programs make. They went back down to FCS. You might say, oh, that's an unfair advantage. It's not always because like FCS, like at the top of FCS, they're good programs. And Idaho was kind of getting beaten by these FCS programs a lot, or was competitive. Um, yeah, Idaho's back, doing real good. Watch out for Idaho. They like to run trick plays. Hayden Hatton, wide receiver, he's thrown for 2 touchdowns. And it feels they've called them like when they've been up late in second halves of games, like real big. And I feel like they've done that just to be like, hey, we'll show this to you on tape. Just the back of the mind kind of thing. So I think teams have to watch out for it. Yeah, Idaho's so much fun. Kibby Dome, that's a place again. It's weird, they got the field goal post coming out the wall there. It's so much fun. I have the weird video. It's like from some Mickey Mouse thing where Goofy is yelling potato land or something, and it always seems to get decent engagement whenever I post that about Idaho. So shout out to the Idaho fans and everything about that. Yeah, Karan, that was a great article by him. I could go on about Idaho forever, but we have a lot of coaching movement. In fact, and I was reviewing real quick. I missed a few, but we could touch on them in the offseason when everything's really settled. For now, I'm going to talk about kind of the big ones. I'll run through them real quick, and then we'll go back and recap. In depth on some and not as in depth on others. We'll go back and forth. Again, when everything's settled in the offseason, we can really establish, hey, what is this looking like? But one of the biggest ones, Willie Fritz from Tulane went to Houston to replace Dana Holgerson. Kurt Signetti went from James Madison to Indiana to replace Tom Allen. Replacing Signetti is Holy Cross's Bob Chesney. Middle Tennessee fired Rick Stockstill. Derek Mason, former Vanderbilt head coach, familiar with the area, was hired. Wyoming's Craig Bowl, he's going to retire after the bowl game. Long run there and also at North Dakota State, helped start the North Dakota State dynasty. Defensive coordinator for Wyoming, Jay Salvo, will take over. New Mexico's Danny Gonzalez is out after 4 seasons. Bronco Mendenhall, name that people are familiar with. He's back after stepping away from the game to just reset, take some time for himself. After 2 years, he's back in. Nevada's Kenny Wilson is out after 2 seasons. Texas's DC linebacker, co-DC and linebackers coach Jeff Choate was named the replacement. Of course, Texas in the playoffs. He's going to go after that. Boise State's interim head coach, Spencer Danielson, was officially named the head man. And seemingly official, a lot of reporters have said it's official. Duke hasn't said anything official yet. So just in case, just putting it out there. It isn't official, but it seems like it. And we say that, and then Mike Elko and Mark Stoops happened. But Penn State's defense coordinator, Manny Diaz, is set to take over at Duke. Back to the top with the first one, Willie Fritz. This one, man, I should have seen it coming, of course. Like, no offense to Tulane, like, good program. They've built something real there. Willie Fritz has built something there. I know you're not supposed to buy into what coaches say, and I should know my lesson. But last offseason, I wrote about programs who'd be ready to take the leap with the expanded playoff. I wrote about Tulane, especially with Fritz being there, and like Fritz had said, like him and his wife, they really like that, they want to stay there, and it makes sense. But they are losing Michael Pratt. I'm pretty sure he's going to go into the draft or he's transferring, but I feel like it's done there. The rest of the ACC, there have been, again, some teams left, but other teams that came up like UTSA and stuff, they're coming real fast. And Houston probably has a lot more money. It's kind of the same geographical area. I feel like it's a good fit there. So it's a good hire. I like him as a head coach. And I get firing Dana Holgerson, 31-28 after 5 seasons there. Dylan, what are your thoughts on Fritz going from Tulane to Houston?
Yeah, I thought there was a good shot that he would leave after last year. I know he had, I think Georgia Tech was the team that he was rumored to be going to. And then he chose to stay at Tulane, and they're continuing to win football games. They won their um, division, I guess you could say. They were runner-ups in their conference title game, and um, won't be the New Year's Six team this year, but still a really good year for Tulane. And um, Houston was one I was a little bit surprised to see him take. Now, I think I want to see what he does as a recruiter in that area because that is a huge talent-rich area, in the recruiting world. So I want to see how he can take over. For Dana there, because Houston has gotten a lot of really talented players. Unfortunately, they just lost one to the portal and Matthew Golden. We'll probably talk a little bit more about guys that entered the portal a little bit later in the show. But I want to see how he kind of rebuilds the roster a little bit there because first year in the Big 12 they went 4-8, I believe. Kind of got torn apart in some of those games. Kind of felt like the Dana fire was kind of inevitable. And Willie Fritz, I think, is a really good hire in terms of the culture and in terms of just the X's and O's. But I really want to see how he can compete with some other in-state schools on the recruiting trail. Because it's going to be really hard to do with Texas going to the SEC and A&M still recruiting their heads off, and I'm really curious to see what that looks like. But solid hire. I think Houston made the right move here. But I think there's still some questions to answer for sure.
Yeah, that's the whole thing. Going up to a different division or different conference, the recruiting is really big. But Tulane, they were hitting on recruits, especially like getting guys like Michael Pratt and stuff like that. So it'll be interesting to see. But again, I think at least as a team, the floor will be raised because Fritz just knows how to build good programs. Look at where Tulane was to where they are now. I think it's a good fit there. Talk about a guy who knows how to win. Over the past 2 seasons, when James Madison made the jump from FCS to FBS, Kurt Cignetti was 19-4. Great hire, I think, for Indiana. Placing Tom Allen, who went 33-48 in 7 seasons, 2 bowl appearances, which is that's decent at Indiana, but I feel like Indiana now they want to step up and they want to be a serious football program. Serious is in the fact that they at least want to be really contending for bowls. Um, I don't. It's tough because I was cheering for James Madison. I thought, hey, the Sun Belt could become a really good Group of Five league, but again, I'm not faulting a guy for making the jump to a higher level. And then also Holy Cross, they were down the dumps, and then Bob Chesney came along, and he has crafted amazing offenses. So him going to James Madison, I don't think James Madison is going to skip a beat at all. The offense might even get even crazier and just more fun because James Madison, like they were really good on defense this year, and like the offense was fun. But there's sometimes where the offense, I don't know, like looked a little sleepy. Holy Cross has never been. You could never accuse Holy Cross of being sleepy. I think they had a game with the backup this year, and like they still look pretty decent. Um, so yeah, two just chips passing the night kind of. Thoughts on Cignetti to Indiana, and thoughts on Chesney to from Holy Cross to James Madison.
I agree with you. I wanted to see Cignetti kind of get the opportunity to lead James Madison to, like a Sun Belt title, just because the last couple of years they weren't able to. I'm glad that they're going to be in a bowl game this year. I assume he's not going to be coaching in that. I'd probably have to do some research on that to see if that's true. But I'm pretty sure he's already been introduced to Indiana, and that's all done and official. But yeah, he did a phenomenal job at that program. Got everybody talking about James Madison. They got him in the AP poll. So phenomenal job there. They did a great job in the transfer portal as well. Jordan McLeod, namely, being the top guy there. Tom Allen did show that you can win football games in the Big Ten at Indiana, not consistently, but they did it, for a couple of years there. But with so many teams coming into the Big Ten next year with Oregon and Washington and USC and UCLA, they're only going to be put further down the totem pole of the Big Ten. So I feel like their schedule is going to get even tougher. I feel like he is a guy that can help turn them around, but that conference is just going to be brutal. So I wouldn't be surprised if they have some really brutal years in the first couple with him as their coach, but I think they could be a pretty decent team in the near future. But the Holy Cross one, yeah, I mean, Matthew Sluka is a guy that there's been so many transfer quarterbacks that have come in that Sluka kind of is getting forgotten about, and he's been one of the best FCS quarterbacks, and a lot of that has to do with the coaching of Bob Chesney. Like you said, their offense is a lot of fun. They've had a lot of really good weapons as well. Top 10 scoring offense in the FCS, I think, each of the last 2 years. They're a lot of fun to watch. And I want to say they played, was it Ohio last year? Oh, that was Fordham. Never mind. That was Fordham. I'm getting teams mixed up, but both fun offenses of the last couple of years. But yeah, I don't think James Madison is going to take a step down at all. I did just want to see, Cignetti get that opportunity to coach for a conference title with James Madison because he probably won't for Indiana for a while. But yeah, James Madison, I think they'll be just fine in the Sun Belt.
Uh, Next one, Rick Stockstill out after 18 years, 10 bowl appearances. So on the surface, hey, that's pretty good for Middle Tennessee. Derek Mason is taking over. But if you dig a little deeper, Rick Stockstill, if you think Iowa's nepotism was bad, it was worse than Middle Tennessee. His son, the quarterback, good quarterback. In his defense, a real good quarterback, but he like there's like some rules at the school to against nepotism, but like he went around it, whatever. And then the son became the OC, and like they've been fine for where they've been like conference wise. But if you look at the broader scale, they're basically in Nashville with Vanderbilt. They should have been at par or even maybe better than Vanderbilt this past 20 years, based on look at where Vanderbilt's been. They've had like a few spikes. And especially if you look at like what James Franklin did at Vanderbilt, Middle Tennessee could have been doing that. Especially Middle Tennessee could have been dominating their weaker conferences. Instead, they were just fine making bowls. It's like, okay, we're making bowls. That's fine. It can't settle for that. I feel like it's finally like that. Stockstill also, I feel like he's been hinting at retirement for the past few years too. So it's kind of like, all right, maybe more like a mutual parting of ways thing, but like he's fired. I really think that this is a prime position, a sneaky position where Middle Tennessee could become a real serious football program, at least at the G5 level. A lot of talent in Tennessee in that area. Derek Mason, he did decent at Vanderbilt. I mean, for what Vanderbilt's been, defensive minded coach. I don't know. Again, just it's kind of disappointing to see that Middle Tennessee like could have been so much better than where they are now. And again, 10 bowl appearances in 18 years, that's nothing to sniff at if you're just looking at, hey, this is a G5 program in a lower G5 conference. Well, they were. But again, it's just they could have been a real power. If you want like a compare, like they not saying they could have been a Boise State level, but they could have been kind of close. So yeah, just they have a high ceiling that's definitely there. Um, I could rant about this because this is something that I've kind of bashed on Stockstill in the past a little bit. Um, and like I guess some people are like, "What are you talking about? He's making bowls." It's like, yeah, I mean, yeah, but you could be doing a lot better there. So I'm gonna stop talking now before I just keep ranting. No offense, again, 10 bowl appearances, 18 years, that's real good. Middle Tennessee, the Blue Raiders could have been so much better. Also, they're the Blue Raiders. They have a cool mascot and a cool name, and they're not accomplishing anything with that.
Yeah, they only won one conference title in his tenure, and it was in his first year in the Sun Belt. It was in 2006. I think they've only been to the Conference USA title game once. Um, no, I want to say they lost to that might have been UAB's conference title in 2018. Um, but it just, yeah, there was so much inconsistency. Like they would have really good seasons, put together a really strong year, and then they would just get smacked around in their conference after that. I don't think they've had a winning record in the conference since that year that they went to the conference title game. And this year they had a really talented, very talented defense. And all those guys from the defensive line, I mean, Marley Cook, Zaylen Wood, Devin Curtis at linebacker, Sam Brunfield, all really talented dudes, really productive dudes at Middle Tennessee, all in the portal now after Stockstill left. So I think Derek Mason needs to rebuild this team through the portal because I don't know that they have the depth currently to get the defense especially back to that level. Elijah Metcalf is another guy who's really talented at wide receiver, very productive for them. they have a lot of work to do to rebuild this roster because this team should not have been 4-8 this year. I think they were talent wise way better, and it was a pretty weak conference this year with a lot of new teams in, some teams out. I thought this was going to be a pretty good year for Middle Tennessee, but yeah, I think this was probably the right time to move on from Stockstill after 18 years. And Derek Mason, I think this is a pretty good fit. Like you said, he knows the area well, so I think he'll be able to rebuild this roster pretty quickly.
Another longtime head coach, again, Craig Bull at Wyoming, retiring after 10 years at Wyoming, was also at North Dakota State for 10 years, won 3 titles there. He's 60-60 with 6 bowls with the Cowboys. So this one will be to see this last bowl game, the Arizona Bowl versus Toledo, will be whether he finishes above 500 or not. This one, I was on kind of hard on Craig Bull too, but just because I thought that, hey, when you're going from the lower level to upper level, you have to change up your offense. But then I've matured. I realized, hey, this is Wyoming's a real hard job to win at. And what he's done there is fantastic. And kind of doing the ground and pound and defensive thing. That's kind of the best way to do it. If you're in Wyoming, and they've done real well with it. Um, these last few, I mean, the Boise State one real quick and the Duke one real quick because that one's not official. Boise State, Spencer Danielson, the DC taking over officially. He stepped in and went 3-0. They won the Mountain West title. You got to give the job to him. Manny Diaz, he was decent at Miami. It's just a lot of Miami meddling. It's kind of crazy there. Um, Danny Gonzalez out in New Mexico, Ins Bronco Mendenhall, Ken Wilson out in Nevada, Jeff Choate is in. I lump these two together because these are both really hard places to win. So it's an uphill climb. Bronco Mendenhall, he did DC at New Mexico back in the day. Jeff Choate did win at Montana State as a head coach, 28 and 22. Semifinal finish in 2019. But yeah, tough places to win. In the Southwest, the Southwest of the United States for these two programs.
Yeah, the New Mexico one is really fascinating. I felt like it was time for Danny Gonzalez to be out of there. I did like the way that they finished last season. The win over Fresno State was as good of a win as they've had in a long time, and they showed a lot of promise on offense, which I thought was really good. Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt was one of the best running backs in the country. I think it's the first time that New Mexico's had one of the best anything in any position in college football in a while. So I like the potential there. And Brock Mendenhall, that's a really good ball coach. He's won a lot of games, had a long, successful career, especially at BYU. So I'm excited to see that he's back in the game. He wants to coach again, and I think this might be a spot where he can win some games.
Yeah, I'd side with Mendenhall doing a potentially better job. Again, long track record over 17 years. 135 and 81, really good at BYU, decent at Virginia. So I think he's got good a good process to help New Mexico there. And Nevada, just one of the hardest places to win. Also this Saturday, in between the FCS games after Army Navy, is the Heisman Trophy presentation. The finalists: Oregon's quarterback Bo Nix, Washington's quarterback Michael Penix Jr., Ohio State's wide receiver Marvin Harrison Jr., LSU quarterback Jaden Daniels. Any potential snubs? Real quick, I feel like this year is kind of weird. There are a decent amount of players who are like kind of floating around. I'll just say real quick, Jalen Milroe, just because like again, prisoner of the moment kind of thing, but he was really decent, and then just exploded. Especially after being benched against USF. And just like he had awesome moments. I think he should just been a finalist. How about you, Dylan?
I think for the finish, I'd say yeah. If we're only taking the last maybe month and a half of the season, I think that's Heisman finalist worthy. The first half is kind of hard to forget. I will say the Texas game though, he showed a lot of fight because that first half of the Texas game was tough. But he really rallied back and was making some really good throws to keep them in that game for the long run. And then obviously, Texas was just a little bit stronger in the end at that point in the season. But um, I don't think it's possible for a Heisman Trophy winner, especially I'd argue even a finalist, to be benched at some point in the season. And I don't even know if it was really a performance thing. I think Nick Saban's excuse was that he was just trying to get the other quarterbacks playing time, which, whatever. Um, but I've talked about that USF game a lot on the podcast. It's just the most un-Alabama football game I've watched in Nick Saban's tenure, and I can't believe they won. Um, but no, Jalen Milroe definitely deserves credit for the way that they finished the season. I mean, if we're just going off of moments alone, I think the Heisman moment of the season was the finish at Auburn. Like nobody else's moment can touch that, in my opinion. Michael Penix Jr. having a really clutch couple drives against Oregon. I guess you could argue that as well. Um, but I don't know. I've seen a lot of people though talking about Jordan Travis being snubbed because the college football playoff committee views him as, being so valuable that he keeps them, on his own. He keeps them out of the playoff because he's not in there. And I know there's the fine print about, oh, if somebody substantial is missing, that can play into, that team not getting into the playoff. I feel like he was having a really good season. Um, I don't know if it was Heisman worthy necessarily, but team that's winning constantly and their offense is putting up decent numbers, the quarterback is going to be in the conversation, as long as he's not turning the ball over. And he wasn't. He was doing a phenomenal job. Had a really good season. I think he's worthy of being, probably in the top 10 of the Heisman, I'd say. But as a finalist, I don't know if the recent events are just. I don't think that's an argument enough to just put him in because the college football playoff thinks he's that important. I think he had a great season and a great career, and I'm really sad that his season ended the way it did. But I don't think that you know, we should say, oh, he must be a Heisman finalist. He must be one of the best players in the country. Like, I don't think those two things are, mutually exclusive. So I don't think he's a snub necessarily. I think if you take what he did this season, compare it to the four guys that are going to be there in New York, I don't think it necessarily compares as much because what those three quarterbacks especially did is just ridiculous. And statistically, Jordan Travis is not up there with them, but he did have a great season nonetheless, and is a huge reason why Florida State is undefeated.
Yeah, I tend to agree. One more player, real quick. Texas's defensive tackle Tavondre Sweat. He's not putting up outrageous stats like people talk about. Whenever there's a defensive play, like, oh, Ndamukong Suh had that really. Suh put up crazy stats and was like insanely dominant, like insanely dominant. He was like one of the only reasons Nebraska was like in the Big 12 title game. Sweat is nowhere near that, but if you just look at what Sweat has done and how offenses have to game plan around him, and he basically shuts down the middle of the line, he just takes over the middle by himself, and teams just have to account for that. And he's done well. Like the end of the Kansas State game, he took over. That's real cool. And like the touchdown he scored was awesome. And like strike the pose. So I hope he gets at least a few votes because like he kind of deserves it. Um, your winner, real quick. This kind of feels like a runaway. I feel like it's gonna be Jaden Daniels. Do you have any arguments against that? Like, I'm open for it. I just feel like it is. I feel like his stats, he's put his team in position to win. It's not his fault that the defense stinks, and he's just watch him play, man. Just eye test, man. Sometimes it's eye test, and he's fun, man. That's my biggest thing. So
Yeah, eye test stats. Keeping his team in games. I think he does it all. I know they lost 3 games early. And team, I think they were kind of forgotten about by probably what October. As a team with postseason implications. Um, and the whole thing about Jaden Daniels, like stat padding, I think is a load of garbage. I don't think that's anything. You play to win the game, and with the talent that he has, and the growth that he's made over the years, he's going to put up numbers against Georgia State. Please, like it's just going to happen. So, I think Jaden Daniels is the winner because he's just been as good as, you see Heisman quarterbacks with their statistics. I've seen a matchup with like Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson's, he didn't have quite the rushing numbers that Lamar Jackson did, but, to that extent with the passing and the rushing ability, scoring a ton of touchdowns, putting up a ton of yards, not turning the football over very much. He's been phenomenal. I think Michael Penix Jr. was the Heisman winner for a while. And then there was that rough stretch where they just struggled to get in the end zone. I think he had multiple games where he didn't throw a touchdown pass. I don't think any Heisman's ever done that before. Um, but I think, he's made it a little bit tougher with the way he performed in that Pac 12 championship game because he just balled out against Oregon again. And so I think he's worthy of having that vote be a little bit closer than it probably would have been 2, 3 weeks ago. Um, and then so he would be my runner up. I'd probably put Bo Nix third, Marvin Harrison Jr. fourth.
Yeah, I'd agree with that order. Knicks, people are like, oh, he's a check down guy. Yeah, he's a check down, but he's also real good when he chucks it deep. And he's kind of
Yes,
touchdown
thank
or
you.
check down, and also he runs. So it's kind of what you want in a quarterback, touchdown or check down. So I don't know why people were so on him for that.
The
Marvin
check
Harrison
down thing's
Jr.
weird. The
Yeah,
check down thing is really weird because like I watch Oregon games and he checks the ball down the field often.
yeah,
And I know they have the talent to be able to, check it down and have guys do stuff after the catch, but that's just he's not Derek Carr out there.
yeah,
Like I
yeah,
don't know why people are where that comes from. So that's just my little rant about that.
yeah. And Marvin Harrison Jr. doesn't have like the overwhelming stats, but come on, guys, just use your eyes. Just use your
Yeah,
eyes.
talent
He's
wise, nobody's with him. Yeah.
exactly so good. Uh, yeah, that's about it. We can go on. Transfer portal just opened, but like there's so many names moving. I feel like when it closes up, it'll be a better time to really assess the situation, especially with some players taking their names out, and you never know with sources. Some people are trying to get ahead and they don't know. So we've decided, hey, we're just gonna leave that alone for now. We'll touch on that later. So that's a wrap for me and Dylan. Dylan, thank you so much for coming on. I won't have you talk the rest of this. Save your voice. So thanks to all y'all coming on again. Navy Army this weekend, FCS playoffs and all that. I'll come back next week when we have more to talk about. Talk about the Heisman winner. Bowl games coming up. We'll be previewing whatever bowls are coming up in between whatever we record pods, stuff like that. So for me, Dylan, everyone at the transfer portal, thank you all for listening and see you next time.